is and be done with this here. All right. All right, so let me show you the solution. Quick and dirty way to do this. Now, I'm showing you a quick and easy way to do this because it is a simple piece of problem. I gave a lot of examples. I'll show you on the board some examples that would make this complicated, that would say, no, you really need to really draw the whole thing out and check every detail. But on the most basic level, what do we got? We got one train that's doing like this. That's the IC 302. We got another train that's going the opposite direction, and I'm sure a lot of you caught that because I saw your pictures and you caught it. The train's going the opposite direction, so it's doing like this. And my art isn't lining up, but it's going the other way, so its stair step is the opposite direction going down like that. And then finally, and I'm running out of board here, then the last train kind of doing like this, like that, kind of a little bit messy. But when it's nice and simple like this, I can get away with simple graphics and still get the answer correct. So the total time for this guy, the letter U in our UIC 406, the total time is going to be from the very beginning, 9 a.m., all the way down to 15:05, 3:05 p.m. So we got 6 hours and 5 minutes. This is the analysis period, 6 hours and 5 minutes. Or 365 minutes. 365 minutes is the analysis period. That's the total range that we're looking at. Without any other instruction, that's what we got. So there's clearly some gap right here, and there's some gap right here. That's where the closest, where those two train paths are the closest together, is at those 2 points. There could be some oddball reasons why that might not be the location. One example would be, what if the train is going, and it's going, and it's going, and then it stops? Like it goes into a siding, or it goes into a platform at a station and just sits. So that would be an oddball example where you don't have this nice simple, there's just one place where the train paths are closest together. But other than stuff like that, these are trains that are moving. They have a clear point where they're the closest to each other. So this is the slack. This is the buffer, essentially. So we just want to measure how much that buffer is, and it'd be the same as if we were to take this and redraw the whole thing squished together, but we can just measure this buffer. This buffer right here is 950 to 1015. 950 to 1015, so we got 25 minutes. 25 minutes, right? 25 minutes. So there's a 25-minute buffer there that we could squish out, that we would compress out. And down here, we got 1150 and 1300. So we got 70 minutes right there. Got 70 minutes. That's another squishy buffer. We can squeeze that out. So 365 minutes minus 25 minus 70. So minus 95, so that's 270. So our utilization is 270 over 365, like that.
The percentage?
Yeah, percent. 74%. Other oddball things that might come up, kind of crazy oddball stuff. Track maintenance. Track maintenance. What if, just making this up, what if this block was out of service because track maintenance? Well, you would not be able to slide this train up. That wouldn't happen. So that end game right there, you can't do anything. might be a restriction that says trains can't pass that point during certain times. Security. Big chemical train not allowed to pass through a certain place at a certain time of day. Noise, some kind of agreement that says you're not allowed to run a big noisy train past a house at 6 a.m. in the morning. Stuff like that. And that those restrictions exist in the real world. There are restrictions that say trains can't run at certain times because they violate security, they offend somebody nearby, they violate some other marketing constraint, some other factor. There could be some artificial constraint that says that path can't be moved. But other than that, it's, you just squish it all together and figure out what your utilization is, and away you go. Questions? So a basic, yeah, Ursa.
I'm just because we've been doing this.
Yeah.
So what you're saying actually is that within this 6 hours and 5 minutes, the utilization of my fats has been 75%.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But then, what do I do with it? Like, I guess the best thing is that I need the highest utilization is a better one. Though, by doing the analysis before, we saw that it depends on which path you take. So you can have high utilization, and at the same time you can have lower utilization. In the above example, I'm talking about the other one.
So I think I actually put a teaser question at the end of this sheet. Suppose we give ourselves a little freedom. What if I can resequence these trains? What if I free this up a little bit and I make a negotiation that says, you know what, the path shape will be the same, but I can switch the order. And this would be a negotiation of like, well, I'll negotiate with the commercial operator to switch their location on the schedule, swap out 2 trains or something like that. What could we do to improve this utilization? What could we do to improve this? And that's a little trickier to do just the way I did on the screen. I need to actually stop and really draw it out in the kind of the level of detail you all are doing right now in a lot of your work. But I think you will find that if we switch this around and maybe take this guy out of the middle and put these 2 parallel guys, trains going in the same direction close together, and trains going the opposite direction, not right in the middle of the pack of trains going the same direction, I think you will find that you can squeeze them tighter. That if you take 365 minutes as your original baseline, then take this train out of the middle and move it down here, and take this train and move it up here, or something like that, I think you'll discover that you can get below 270 minutes. That you can get those 3 trains through the network in even less time. And so that would even further reduce your utilization, but the implication by reducing your utilization is that you have freed up extra capacity. So right now, you could argue, I have 25% capacity remaining on this network. Whether it's really usable or not is another argument, because can you fit another train path in that remaining 25% of capacity? Maybe, maybe not. But certainly, if I could push that number down to 60%, I bet I could fit another train path if I had 40% of network capacity available to me. I bet I could. So resequencing these trains might free up that little bit of extra capacity, might squish that number down even further and give us enough left over to put a 4th train into this picture. Nava?
I was thinking, you say you have calculated the time here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm giving that to you. I made it up. I don't even know if it would really work or not. I just made it up for the purposes of the class example. Go backwards.
Yeah, backwards. Do we use the stopping time and the time to accelerate to figure out?
Well, I haven't even told you how fast these trains are going. And I made these numbers up, so I don't know how fast they're going, because I just made up these block occupancies as just some kind of a example of what could possibly be true. I'll tell you how I did it. I said to myself, oh, let's assume the fast train is 15 minutes a block, and then I added 5 minutes buffer for that possession. That's how I did this. I mean, I just, those are just totally made up numbers, because as we've just done in the prior slide, the example is probably more like not minutes but seconds. So the occupation, the possession for occupation is probably not 5 minutes. It's probably more like 30 or 40 seconds maybe. So I really inflated these numbers just to keep the numbers easy and simple. I wanted to keep them in round numbers too. I didn't want to give you a bunch of numbers that was like 9:03 and 30 seconds. I didn't want to do that, you know.
We say how long is the station, how long time it take to occupy it, and how time.
Yeah, you'd have, I mean, in reality, you'd have to put all that together. You'd have to, I mean, because these are just straight line shots. There's no excitement going on here. There's no change in speed. It's real easy. Now, we'll try to, towards the end of the semester, try to get you tuned up and hit you with something a little more complicated, maybe spend a chunk of time and say, hey. In fact, I've been waiting, I actually am waiting. I did put a request in from a buddy for a track diagram for a piece of track, a real track diagram. And so I think what would be a really good exercise is for me to give you a track diagram and give you some train performance information and start from the very beginning and say, okay, you pick the blocks. You figure out what the track schedule is going to be. You know, all the way from step one all the way to the end. And I just haven't, but I think that's going to happen. I think I'm going to have that information. I think that's going to be something we'll do in class sometime before the end of the semester. Yes?
I was wondering, and maybe Fabrizio can give me an answer, if this is the reason why, for example, in Italy recently, in the big stations, they rescheduled all the train timetables in a way so that, for example, all the trains leave in the first 15 minutes of the hour, and some other trains arrive in the second.
What do you think? I don't know about that.
Nodes analysis is a bit different. This is lines analysis, while the total analysis is made by other methods. And anyway, it's sort of related, while if you have all the trains going in the same direction, like in this example, it's not. You have less capacity consumption than having one train going and one train coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So
that's the
more or less
relation.
the same
Yeah.
idea.
I have a question about, like you said, that it's better if we put the trains that are going in the same direction together.
Yes.
And have the one going that way. But what's the effect of that on people who want to take the train? Like, let's say both of them are using the same line. Then if you have like 15 minutes between them, if you schedule them together, but then you have half an hour between them, so the next one to come is like in.
Well, it has a huge effect, and this is single track territory we're talking. So immediately, most reasonably dense services in Europe, it's double track. So that concern is out the window. But you go north of Hillero on the local bane and wham, single track. And I'm actually really impressed. They keep that thing on schedule because you don't know this, but I actually am now volunteering at the preservation movement up there, and I was actually on the train crew a month ago in the cab, shoveling coal, and we had to keep a schedule because we had to meet the trains at the station at Greistel. I mean, we pull in, and this other train's going this way, and it's a commercial service, so and we got to pass them, and then we got to do the runaround and uncouple and switch and do and go back, and so you really got to keep it together because you mess up, you screw up, and suddenly the whole network gets all goofed up because the meets and passes don't happen when they're supposed to. So yeah, single track territory, it gets messy. Now most of the commercial service on the local bane is homogeneous speeds. There is no express train. They're all running the same speed. So they can do that synchronization at the stations and the sidings pretty easily. It gets really messy in places like mixing freight and passenger service. And it gets really messy in the United States where we have single track, freight trains, intermodal, and Amtrak passenger trains, all on a single track. And you have to meets and passes, and you got all this stuff going on, and that's part of why the timekeeping also gets really ugly in the United States, because it's just so hard to keep the dispatching together. And if nobody's following a timetable to begin with, then it just, it's just a zoo. It just really is. But yeah, so yeah, you flip this around, we're assuming that everybody's happy with that decision, that we're not upsetting anybody by by switching the schedule around and moving the trains. Obviously, if somebody's unhappy with that, then it's a no-go, and it's not going to happen. Yes?
So the total time of 365 minutes, we cannot take it for granted. We cannot reduce it, changing the timetable.
That is the baseline. That's where we started.
Okay, we cannot change the time.
Well, you can change it, but the point is to say, did I improve from where I was?
Yeah.
So the 365 is the baseline in the sense of someone presented this, and you're going to make it better, or you're going to show how they're consuming the network. For example, you could present a really bad timetable and purposely have a series of trains where you have positioned them all in the worst possible combination possible to make them use as much time on the network as possible. You know, that's going to make a huge baseline, and then you know, anything you do from that point on is going to look great because you're going to immediately have the easy fruit and start saving time. Realistically, the baseline is in European practice is more like, well, here's what our capacity consumption is right now, and we're going to use this figure based on a very intelligently designed timetable, and we're going to use this figure to either argue that we need to spend more money on track because we're overloaded, we're at a very high number, we're at 80, 90%, and therefore, oh, it's time to go to the taxpayer for more track. Or we're going to make that argument to talk to a train operator and say, you know what, we can't take your train because we're at capacity and we don't have room for it. Or we're going to use that number as possibly as a management performance measure, and we're going to use that to provide a stockholder reward. We're going to use that as a performance measure, and we're going to talk to our management team and say, hey, if you guys can get capacity up to, or utilization up to 90% this quarter, we're going to give you a salary bonus. And in the North American railroads, they do give salary bonuses to management on things like hitting targets for delay per 100 train miles and stuff like that. They do that. So in any kind of big commercial enterprise, you set some kind of targets and you say, especially to upper management, hit these targets and we're going to give you some kind of salary bonus for the year or something like that. So
there's also a kind of measurement that is given in the European Union. It's like if you take 24 hours a period, then you can make an analysis for the whole day long, and it shouldn't be over 70% active. While if you take just the peak hour, it could be up to 80%. But that's something that use as a standard as a measurement.
So it's very similar, any kind of transport mode, it's going to be very similar. There's going to be peak periods of consumption, and you expect to have slow periods as buffers to maybe catch up. You know, in the airline industry, you have a peak hub terminal time at most airports. There's like 3 or 4 major cycles a day where the airport is packed to the gills, and everybody's changing planes, and then all the planes depart, and the airport's empty for a couple hours, and then it repeats again on another cycle. And if there's a storm or there's bad weather, then of course all of those departures get pushed back and delayed, and the buffer time between cycles is where they try to recover, where they try to catch up with where they are on the schedule. What's that?
It's called holding point.
Yeah, holding point. Thank you very much. I think we're summarizing here. So we would do this, last couple of slides, we would do this, we would do each section like that. We would do that calculation separately on each significant controlled piece of track. And then for the whole network, you would say which one of these is the highest, which one is the most utilized, and you would quote that number as the utilization for the whole network. Because you'd call this what would be like a bottleneck, a limiting factor for the whole network. So these are all the things we've looked at today, and have a great week. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.